Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living. So, as we age, we age every day. Each part of life, when I reflect on it, has a different set of what I think of as provoking situations, the ones that push you or pull you with questions about things like purpose and fulfillment and what am I doing here? And you can be successful in your life and in your career and still come to a moment in time where you start to question things, where it feels like something has changed. And maybe that's you that has changed, and often that's the case. But maybe, and that's that, that internal shift that leaves you questioning, isn't there more? But maybe it's also because there's something that's happened in your life, that an external situation that has caused everything to be called into question. Maybe something that has imploded really in your life. And so I'm going to be speaking today with a man who knows a lot about this, because his experience of loss ended up opening the door to profound realizations about creating success as we age. So stay tuned. It's going to be a juicy conversation. We started already before I hit the record button. I said, wait, let's hold those thoughts. So welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio. I'm Laurie Seymour, host of Wisdom Talk Radio and CEO and founder of the Baca Institute. Head to the Baca Institute to discover your quantum connection. And that's your quantum connection with your inner guidance. And you can do that there by taking the quantum connection quiz. We are each designed to connect differently with that universal field, what some people call source. And knowing our own way of doing that is the first step of really optimizing your own connection with your inner guidance at a deeper level than you ever thought you could. It's the secret, really, your inner guidance is the secret to having abundant flow in your business and your personal life. So my guest today is Scott Couchenour. He is a life and business coach working primarily with those in their 40s and 50s who desire a greater handle on their future and the fulfillment that has waned since building a successful life and career. He seeks to change the narrative on what it means to grow old. Yay, let's change that narrative. On a personal level, he enjoys life with his wife, Jennie, of over 35 years, his 2 grown kids, and their growing families. He is pop to 2 grandkids and 1 more on the way so far. I'm about to be a grandmother in March, so I'm all excited about this new phase of my life. So welcome, Scott. I'm really glad that you have decided to join me here today on Wisdom Talk Radio.
I am honored, and it's a pleasure to have spoken with you up to this point, and it was just a natural thing to want to be a part of your conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, because that's how I felt. I reached out to you to meet you, or you reached out to me, I don't even know, but there was that feeling of, oh, there's a deeper conversation here. And as I alluded to in my opening remarks, we really did start to touch on things about, the Gen Xers, the baby boomers, and who is what. And yes, I'm a baby boomer, but as you said, well, yeah, but you sound more like a Gen Xer.
That's right. All you need to do is ask, how do you define retirement? And you get an idea what perspective they have.
Right. Oh, that's good. Now, why is that? What do you notice, or what have you discovered?
Well, I've learned that the picture that we have been given by those older than us, and I mean both of us, is, and this has not been intentional. It's an unintentional consequence, but it's this idea that retirement is after working 30 or 40 or maybe even 50 years in a position at a company,
Mhm.
getting your gold watch, pulling your pension, and then turning your attention to your garden and golf.
Mm.
And that's the idea, is I'm going to spend the rest of my life in the garden and the golfing,
Wow.
or fill in the blank.
Right.
Um, which I think, that's all there was. The Industrial Revolution brought about this idea that you work until you're done and you move
Mhm.
on. That is so foreign to those of us in our 40s and 50s and younger
Mhm.
who grew up with a different idea or a different thought. But here's the thing about the 40s and 50s. If you're in that state, I call that the third quarter.
Mm.
Um,
I'm
everything
calling
is
what the 60s third quarter, but that's okay.
that's fine. That's fine. As they say, mileage varies, right? So y- I have noticed a lot of people, me included,
Mhm.
in this idea that we've been raised with this retirement idea. And yet here we are, fast approaching what has been traditionally the retirement age, you know, and it is supported by major constructs like in the US, it's Medicare. You turn 65, you
Mm.
can get Medicare. I mean, that's
Mhm.
the main thing. Retirement plans, retirement planning. There's a whole industry of wealth managers who help you manage your retirement.
Yeah.
So the whole word itself has ingrained itself into the fabric of living in existence. And yet, when I talk to people in their 40s and 50s,
Mhm.
they have no intention of retiring in the traditional sense. And see, that's the thing. It's a
Yes.
traditional sense that has become passe, and it's replaced by pivot. It's replaced by um, jumping to another curve. And
Hmm.
it's an exciting way to look at things. But here's the problem: those who have not really identified this reality, that
Mhm.
there is something beyond the traditional retirement,
Mhm.
there's a lot of angst and a lot
Sure.
of stress because they think, what's wrong with me? First of all, I can't keep up with the second quarter people, the
Mhm.
people in their 30s and 20s and 30s.
Mhm.
So what's wrong with me and what's next? Those are two overarching questions that I hear a lot from my clients and the market that I research and engage with.
Mhm.
Is, I talked to one person the other day whose business was purchased. I mean, their employer sold their company, and the new company reassigned this person to oversee 20 and 30-year-olds.
Uh-huh.
And they are very innovative. They've got liquid intelligence. They're quick to make decisions. And because he's up in age, like in his late 50s or so,
Mhm.
he's got more what is called crystallized intelligence, which is more wisdom,
Ah.
but takes a little longer to come
Uh-huh.
up with answers. And he can't keep up. And he's saying, what's wrong with me? And I say, there's nothing wrong with you. You're
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
in this stage of life that is very critical. And these 20 and 30-year-olds need that steady wisdom.
So that crystallized intelligence. So, I mean,
Yes.
when you use that word, it makes me think that something is become solidified. And I suspect that's
Okay.
not quite really what you mean.
That's not what I mean. Definitely. It is a coming to an understanding that there is something more than just here's a problem, here's a solution, here's a problem, here's a solution. But
Mm.
wait a minute, we've solved this problem more than once. Let's apply some wisdom and experience to this problem, and let's
Okay.
overcome it once and for all. And so it is a crystallized wisdom. It, in one sense, it's not um, become a solid in terms of I'm not going to grow anymore.
Mhm.
On the contrary, it is a crystallized intelligence that can be utilized in life to make life much richer. So if you were to combine a liquid intelligence and a crystallized intelligence, you've got the makings of a fantastic synergy that can take
Oh,
place.
oh, I love
And
that. I love that.
right.
I mean, I work with with something that I speak to as creative intelligence,
Mhm.
which I think is my way of speaking to that combination.
Right.
You know, and I think of that as not simply what we've learned or what we already know,
Mhm.
but that way of tapping into that field of potentiality that the
Right.
physicists talk about, that
Mhm.
which has not necessarily been seen, but that
Right.
we can only do that when we connect in with ourselves at a deeper level.
Right. Right. And when you connect with yourself and when you can reflect, this is one of the things when someone says, "What's the most important thing that you can think that you could do to make the most of this transition into a crystallized intelligence that where you are making the most impact in the world?" And I believe the fourth quarter is that quarter where you can make the most impact in your world.
Hmm.
I say reflection. If you had a set of bookends in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, when you can simply pull back and reflect on what has happened in that day, what you thought, what you experienced, and assimilate that into your journey, you
Hmm.
are light years ahead of the person who just takes one day at a time on its own,
Hmm.
as though nothing's really happened. And one day it will, one day my ship will come in. In the
Hmm.
meantime, I'll just live one day at a time. And there's no real iterative growth that
Hmm.
takes place. So I think reflection and connecting with yourself and I paint the picture kind of like sitting on the bank of a river, a slow moving river. If you can sit there and watch every leaf that represents an experience or a thought or an emotion, and you don't judge it, you just watch it go by.
Hmm.
Then you watch the next one go by and reflect on that. There's so much rich learning and insight that you can gain. And I think, Arthur Brooks wrote a book called From Strength to Strength, which I think is fantastic. And he
Hmm.
talks about the first curve being that liquid intelligence. So I apply that to my four quarters of life. And second quarter, you are building. You're building your family, you're building your career, you're building your business, your name, whatever. And that's in your 20s and 30s. When you reach 40s and 50s, everything is essentially built. Your family is grown.
Hmm.
Maybe they're bringing little ones to the picture. Um, and and since everything is grown, you start to wonder these questions. What's next?
Hmm.
What's wrong with me? What I love about Arthur Brooks' book is that he says there's another curve. And those who can jump from the first curve to the second curve are the ones who can make the most impact. And those curves are liquid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. So you recognize that there's still a place for you.
Hmm.
And it comes from a place of experience and wisdom.
So it's don't
And
look out at those other people and those other generations and think I have to be like them. And if I'm not like them, I don't have value. But
right,
look inside to see, well, what is it that I do have and how do I use that to navigate this new curve?
that is exactly right. I think that when we reach that 50-ish age, we
Hmm.
have all the ingredients we need to have a fantastic fourth quarter and more, if
Hmm.
God allows us. The problem that I think a lot of people have is, first of all, they don't come to terms with the fact that they have all these ingredients. They just look at what they don't have or what they've
Ah,
lost or what is no longer comes natural.
right.
So the first step is recognize you've got all these ingredients. What do I mean by ingredients? I mean, You've got success that you've learned from, failure that you've learned from. You have
Mhm.
wisdom. You've honed a number of skills, and don't stop. Don't the natural thing in thinking about skills is the thing we've learned in our vocation. That's
Right.
true.
Right.
But if you were the head of the household, whether that's male or female, and you ran that house, and you kept the meals on the table, you kept the clothes clean on a cyclical basis, weekly after week, those are there are a number of skills that you have honed over the years. They're just not labeled skills.
Mhm.
They're
Mhm.
just things that you've become proficient at. So skills. Um, your your debt has gone down. Your
Mhm.
equity has gone up. The time that you have in your 50s is much different than the time you had when you were 20 or 30. When your
Mhm.
kids, when you were running and chasing them to all of the rehearsals and all the practices and all the games and all the
Mhm.
recitals, that's all settled down a little. So there's a lot going on that you have going for you, and those are ingredients.
Mhm.
So the
Mhm.
first is we don't recognize that we have ingredients. We don't appreciate that. The second is we don't have a recipe, and that's what wakes me up in the morning,
Ah.
helping people identify the recipe that will put these ingredients together in such a way that I have clients that will say, I never dreamed my life would be as full and as fulfilling and as effective and as satisfying as it could be. And that, when you get to be a part of that transformation,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, I can't imagine life doing anything else.
You have a quite a different way of speaking to that and of crafting that. I love it. I really appreciate the different way that you have of viewing these kinds of transitions and bringing forward what is truly there, what is truly needed, the uniqueness, if we could say it that way, of
Yeah.
a particular person's package. And that there is, we think of recipe as something that, oh yeah, if I have a recipe, I work down through those steps and
Mhm,
I come out with something.
mhm.
We want to like explode that whole idea of recipe from what the way you're talking about it.
Right, right. We take and we cherish every ingredient,
Mhm.
and there may be 2 parts to one ingredient to 10 parts to another ingredient.
Ah.
So looking at your story
Mhm.
is enormous, and I appreciate you, those kind words. I will say that the recipe and ingredients idea is because my mind is very simple, and I need that simple perspective. And secondly, it's what I'm doing today is a result of my journey.
Mhm.
The major disruption in 2015 and all the way through the what some would call a hero's journey
Mhm.
have led me to identify the things that I do now with my clients, because I have committed to becoming the partner that I wish I had had when I was a 50-year-old when I lost my career,
Ah,
because I
okay.
would have saved a lot of time, energy, and stress and
Mhm.
money, if I had done
However,
so.
you might not have developed the kind of resiliency and inward looking ability that has allowed you to craft what you're doing today.
Well, see, I think that's the given. I
Mhm.
think the human spirit is resilient. We can learn from our experiences and we can grow. The question is, how long and how expensive is that process going to take you?
Yeah.
And
Yes. Yes.
I seek to make that process go further, faster, deeper
Mhm.
through an iterative process. And
And iteration is really what we talk about with innovation and
Mhm.
allowing oneself to be a true innovator,
Right.
which is not just taking, something that has been done and, okay, let's tweak this or that, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's making that quantum leap
Yes.
and not leaving behind, because we never leave behind. I mean, in what I do today, well, I used to be a psychotherapist. I used to be a solutions engineer.
Mhm.
I still bring all of that to everything that I do. So I
Mhm.
don't leave it behind, but I see how it is that I'm to bring forward my own expression now.
Right. And it's interesting you would say we never leave anything behind. When we were first married, and this would have been in 1986 or so,
Mhm.
I was a busboy
Mhm.
at a local Dutch restaurant that was one of the only places to go to eat at the time. And so Saturday nights were crazy, and they were lined up out the door and around the building to get in.
Mhm.
I was a busboy, and my job was to walk up with a cart and take this messy table.
Mhm.
All the cups went one place, all the plates in another, all the silverware, napkins, everything had its place. And I
Mhm.
wiped the table and I'd move on to another table because I knew the square footage of that table meant bottom line profit.
Mm. Mhm.
And I used to say, if I could raise a family of four on that busboy's salary, I'd still be doing it today. But the truth is, when I look back over 30 plus years
Mhm.
since, that principle of taking a mess and making it orderly for a purpose
Mm.
um, has stuck with me. I spent 24 years as a COO, and that's what I did.
Mhm.
I bust tables.
Oh,
you
I
know, maybe
love this.
maybe
Ah.
we were losing
Mm.
cash out the door, and I took a look at all the moving parts of how we were generating our cash flow, and accounts payable and accounts receivable, brought everybody to the table. We developed a system, and instead of sweating over what do we pay next, we generated $4 million in cash
Mhm.
because we took that messy table and make it organized. That led to the couple of years as COO to reinvent our company out of
Mhm.
2008 and the downturn and the
Mhm.
struggle we were making, and on through to today. I mean, I'm the one that makes the bed every morning. So I get a quick fix every morning where I take a messy table or a messy bed, make it clean,
Mhm.
move on. And so it's interesting. We really never do leave things behind.
Yeah.
We carry them with us.
And then it becomes how is it that we are taking this into whatever the new creation is?
That's right. That's
Now,
right.
let me ask you something. Were you aware as you started doing what you're doing now that was in essence the the gift from a previous time? Or
It
did you reflect back on that and say, oh my goodness, look at this?
I'm a slow learner, so it occurred to me long
Mhm.
after. You
Mhm.
know, I didn't go when I was given the opportunity to work for my dad, who started the business back in 1989. I didn't say, well, let's see. I know how to bust tables. Is this an opportunity to continue that?
Mhm.
No, I didn't. But it was years after, in looking back, in retrospect, that I naturally gravitated toward this role and the bits and pieces within this role
Mhm.
that made me who I am. And it's funny, we say made me who I am. It's not really making who I was.
Right.
It was
Mm.
lifting the lid on who I already was and who I was
Exactly.
designed to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens. You talk about personality tests and introvert, extrovert,
Mhm.
the disc profile.
Mhm.
Um, that's just, we gravitate toward what we are like, and we find that outlet somehow. We
Mhm.
are like that river of water trying to find its way to the ocean. It's natural. It's what we're designed to be. Uh, My meta theme, if there was such a thing, is to be in the process of helping people become the fullest expression of their unique God-given design.
Mm.
Because when that happens,
Mhm.
today's fulfillment goes up, tomorrow's regret goes down. Because
And the
we are,
world benefits.
and the world, yeah, that's just, if we could all just be ourselves,
Mhm.
our world would be a totally different world.
My friend Jennifer Huff likes to say, and she probably got it from somewhere else, but the universe thought you were a good idea.
That's right. That's right.
And I so appreciate that, because when I start to doubt myself, when I start to second guess myself and then realize, okay, if the universe thought I was a good idea, let me see how I can discover how best to bring that forward.
Mhm.
Not to make me something that I'm not, but to
Absolutely.
reveal it, as I
Yeah.
think that's what you're saying.
Mhm. One
Let
of
it
the
shine.
hallmarks, yes, yes, and one of the hallmarks of a fantastic fourth quarter is being vocationally aligned. And I don't mean necessarily what you do for a paycheck. It's
Mm-hmm.
what you give your attention to. It's what you give your best self to. And that could be for an employer. It could be a business that you own. It could be philanthropy. It could be volunteering, but
Mm-hmm.
you're aligned with who you are. To the extent that we are doing things where we are not aligned,
Mm-hmm.
that takes more energy, and that is energy we can't afford, because at the end of the day, time and energy are gone.
Mm-hmm.
You can't
Mm-hmm.
replenish that time or that energy that you just expended. You have another package tomorrow,
Yeah.
and in some sense it does renew, but you can't go back and
Mm-hmm.
change how you used your energy yesterday.
Right. And what happens too is that you suffer,
Mhm.
because your heart is not happy.
Right.
Your heart is not content, because I really find that people know, they know when they're not, you called it vocationally aligned.
Mhm.
um and I might say it as when they're not living who they are.
Right. Mhm.
So when you say vocationally aligned, you're really meaning so much more than
Than work.
what work you're doing.
Exactly. Exactly. A better way to describe it, I think, would be a formula that I call the 3P80
Mhm.
formula.
What's that?
Um, the three P's are your passion, your personality, and your proficiency, which
Oh.
covers your heart, your head, your hands. And if you can spend 80% of your waking hours engaged in activities that are aligned with your passion, personality, and proficiency, then you are at the apex of fulfillment and impact on others, on,
Mhm,
on your
mhm.
stakeholders, the people around you, your sphere of influence. 3P80. And I don't pick 100% on
Okay.
purpose,
And
because
that's what I was going to ask you about purpose, like which many people would bring in as perhaps the fourth P.
yeah. Well, yeah, and passion and purpose could be the same.
Ah, okay.
But even so, I think there now I was raised in a Christian tradition.
Mhm,
So I come from that background, and that tradition tells us that yes, God said it was good. W-
mhm,
I like what I created. And yet we messed up, and we've created a fallen world. And now, so all the way up to my 3P80,
mhm,
it's not 3P100, because we are in a fallen world. We are imperfect, and we are going to spend some time in things that are not aligned, whether that's by necessity
mm,
or by choice, just
mhm,
mistakes, and things we thought were enjoyable or right for us that we find in hindsight they weren't.
mhm.
And that's just going to be a part of it. Now, if I take a day and I'm 100% great, so I would say it's an average kind of a thing.
Okay.
And the reason I say excellence is defined as the act of becoming the fullest expression, it is a becoming. It's not become. We will never, in my opinion, ever become in this world a full expression of our unique God-given design. Again, because of the fallen nature, the fallen world that we're in, the broken world that we're in. It's some people call it enlightenment or nirvana. For me, it's heaven. That is the full expression. But
But
if
I
we're in
want to,
the
can
act,
we deconstruct that a little bit? Because I
sure.
don't believe in a fallen world, but
Okay.
maybe I do. Maybe I do. And
Okay.
here's what I want to see if there's this connection.
Sure.
Um, I believe that we feel separate, and that
Mm,
that experience of separation, I mean, separate from, we could say separate from self, separate from God's, that
mhm,
you and I are separate,
mhm,
you know, that we, my inherent nature is one that is not, is me separate from my divinity.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and yet I also see that we're here to discover how to express that divinity in the
Right.
physical world, because we are physical beings.
Mhm.
You know, we're not in the ethers, we're here in the physical. So
Interesting.
that may be something that is kind of saying the same thing. I have trouble with the word fallen.
Right. Right. And that's my tradition. Right.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Mhm.
And even though I may have grown up in a different tradition, I think even in the Christian world, there's different ways of speaking to that.
There
But
is.
I think that there's enough commonality there, or enough, maybe even we're even just slightly um, divergent, you know, from one another and how we're thinking about it or how we're talking about it. But it's
Yeah.
all that sense of how do we remember? That's, I guess that's another way. That's what's coming to me right now. How do we remember who we are? How do we remember that connection, that divinity, that beyond the fallen? Because
Mhm.
there was a time when we were not fallen.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think there is a good and evil
Mhm.
principle. And we can, I mean, the news helps us to see all the evil, right? The good
Mhm.
doesn't get press because it
Right.
doesn't sell.
Mhm.
But there's a good and an evil, and I think there's there's this quest that we have inside ourselves to remember, like you said, to remember what our design really was meant to be, and we go off track
Yes.
trying to figure it out. We try to substitute.
Mhm.
Some of the greatest struggles in what traditionally has been called midlife crisis, is, as I observe, is because in the building quadrant or building quarter,
Mhm.
20s and 30s, when you're building everything, you started to attach your identity to what you were building.
Right.
So that
Right.
when it's built and no longer fulfills,
Which
then
is
okay,
inherent in its nature.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
a very easy thing to do
Mhm.
because hey, look at me, especially in America.
Yes. Yeah.
The self-made person, the self-made man, the building, pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps,
Mhm.
even bootstrapping your business. It's all self centered.
Mhm. Mhm.
Look at what I have done with my life.
Yeah,
And then
self
you
and the
reach,
small s self.
yes, yes. And we get to this point where we start having hints of hesitation. We start looking at the boxes that we've filled in
Mhm.
versus the number of boxes we have left to live, to fill in. And we
Mm.
think, What next? What i- is there more?
Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
this all there is?"
Mhm.
I heard one Gen Xer say, "I have enjoyed a successful career, but I'm more interested in taking a hold of what's meaningful,"
Yes.
as if success did not equal meaning.
Right.
And I think that's fascinating, because did we somehow attach our identity to what we've accomplished? And now, because what we have accomplished is rusting in our mind and it's no longer fulfilling like it used to be, because we are wiser, we're
Hmm.
thinking, who am I after all?
Yeah.
So we have to,
We
I
go
think it's
beyond that small s self into
Mhm.
we start having a bigger awareness,
Right. That's right.
and the what we've built cannot fulfill what we know we're here to become.
Right. Right. I heard someone once say that we are not physical beings. No, what is it? We are not human beings having a spiritual experience.
Mhm.
We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Exactly. Mhm.
And I think sometimes that human experience makes us think we are human beings and
Mhm.
not spiritual beings.
Right. Right. Because
You
we have forgotten. That's that remembering. But
exactly.
let me say this to you and see, because I have a feeling that you are working with people, and your work now is in the, okay, I've started remembering and
Mhm.
I don't know how to traverse this field.
Right. That is exactly right. It comes out in a housewife that says, "All I do is make meals and clean clothes.
Hmm.
That's all I've done. What is life all about anymore?
Yeah.
Am I going to do this the rest of my life?" Well, that person, it's the beginning of remembering.
Hmm.
It's more a longing to be something more than what we do.
Right. And I think the longing might,
Might be the
it's
remembering.
that moment
Mm,
before you start remembering.
exactly. Exactly. Um, and that's why I look back on the disruption of my life in 2015,
Hmm.
when it was a seismic shift in my experience. There's life before June 2015, and there is life after. And um, I look back now on that as a kind of gift that
Yes.
I was given,
Yeah. The cosmic two
because
by four.
yeah. Yeah, and once the pain started to go away a little bit, I began to realize, oh, that cosmic two by four turned my head to a different direction.
Yeah.
Not that the life before was all wrong.
Right.
It
Yes.
was part of my story.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we all have this. We all, I'm not unique. Every one of us has a story.
Hmm.
And some of us may not have that external two by four.
Hmm.
It may well up within, but it is going to happen.
Yeah.
We are going to awaken some level of deeper meaning to
Hmm.
life. That's a
And
given.
yeah, and it shows up often as discontent.
Yes.
And if we're only focused on the outside, it can be the married partner who says, "Oh, I don't like you anymore. I'm going to go off and I'm going to have my midlife crisis. I'm going to
Right.
go off and marry somebody else because they're going to give me what I think I'm longing for."
Yeah. When all along it's right within you.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about being able to do what I get to do, is
Hmm.
to help people identify the ingredients that are already there. Ingredients that weren't there when you were 20, when you started your business. They just aren't there. You have to go through life long enough to identify these ingredients. And there is I believe the third quarter, your 60s, 70s. And if
Hmm.
we're fortunate, like I know science is not going to let us die, we go on. Um, that is the most impactful quarter of our lives.
Hmm.
And, don't think about retirement as starting over. We're not starting over from scratch.
No,
Not at
no.
all. We're starting over from experience.
We're starting over with this whole panoply of gifts, really.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
love what a friend of mine once said is, I don't think about what I'm retiring from. I think about what I'm retiring to. And it's
Yes.
really, what do I want to create?
Right.
What is that next creation for me, which is what I love to bring forward with people, and to help them connect with that which is there for them to do.
There's a universal principle, I think, that's at play here when we think about retirement.
Mhm.
Um, and it's the reoccurring theme of death that precedes new life.
Mm,
You see it in, like, outside my window is a field of beans. I live out in the country.
mhm,
That field of beans has been green, vivid green
mm,
for weeks now. And as I look at it now, it's starting to yellow.
yeah.
And those beans are going to continue to turn yellow and yellow and yellow. And then they come along and they harvest the
Mhm,
beans. And those beans then produce, and look at what's happening in the soil,
mhm,
is that the death and decay of the vines that then go into the soil
mm,
become what's next
yeah,
for that next crop.
yeah.
And you see that in all all over the place, where a resurrection is always preceded by death.
Mhm, mhm,
And I see June 2015 as the great event that released me to my future.
mm.
And I didn't know it at the time. I mean,
And we
I went into a
can't.
cave.
We can't. Yeah.
No, no. And that's why it's so helpful to have someone walk with you,
Mhm.
because as they say, you can't read the label when you're inside the jar. You need someone else.
Right, right. I remember someone once saying to me, "Oh, you work with people after they've come through the hero's journey
Mhm,
and they have found the Holy Grail.
mhm.
And then they're saying, well, now what?" And I remember writing a piece around that,
Yeah.
because, and maybe it's they need a new backpack because their backpack is old and crumbly. Maybe they
Mhm.
need new shoes because they've worn out the soles on the 6 pairs of shoes.
Right.
And maybe this is the recreation time.
That's correct. That's
Yeah.
correct. I was
Before, because we're coming to a close, I wanted two
Sure.
things I want to ask you. Um, I'd love for you to speak briefly about the community that you're creating, because I think it's
Oh,
so juicy.
how much time do you have? I am so excited about this. It's I call it the Finish Strong, the community. Um, it is a platform that it's a social media platform, and yet it diverges from your typical social media platform in that there are no ads, there is no political or religious or gender rant,
Mhm.
right? There is just a bunch of people who are beginning to awaken to what's next, and they're helping one another out, and
Mm.
they're creating a recipe for their fantastic fourth quarter. And I believe the members of this platform, this community, they are going to do life together. They may enter
Wow.
through an awareness or a question, what's next,
Mhm.
but they will eventually create friendships and relationships, and they will move into this fourth quarter as a community.
Ah,
And it's my legacy project.
mhm.
When I turn anywhere from 65 to 70 years old, I plan on stepping back to a chairman of the board role. Some of the community coaches will have ownership. And when when I die and I'm gone, this platform will continue, so that those who are in the millennial and Gen Z, when they start reaching this apex of their curve and they start asking themselves, what's
Mm.
next? There'll
Mhm.
be a place to plug into.
Wow.
It's a fascinating thing. And right now it's in beta,
Uh-huh.
and we plan on formally launching in January 2023.
All right.
And
That's soon.
yes, it
Especially
is.
by the time this show is out, it's going to be around the corner.
That's right. That's right. Right now, the beta group is a fantastic, eclectic group of, we've got a truck driver, we have 2 or 3 pastors, we have a life coach, I have a mergers and acquisitions entrepreneur,
Wow.
and they are giving each other feed forward advice to one
Mm-hmm.
another.
Mm-hmm.
And it is more fantastic than I dreamed. I had an idea that when you pull people together from various industries
Mm-hmm.
and backgrounds, that it would be different and helpful, but it's much more helpful than I had ever dreamed. And they're feeding each other ideas that they never would have thought of,
They're
because,
co-creating. That's
and
what I call it. They are
that's
co-creating.
exactly. It is a co-creation experience
Mm-hmm.
where they are much better. And talk about synergy, which is defined as 1 + 1 = 3.
Mm-hmm.
You add
Yeah,
that
this is.
to, and there's a library of information that's constantly being added to. So, but it is 80% community, 20% content,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because we really are, in my opinion, we were created for community. That's part of everybody's DNA.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I love the community. You can find it at finishstrong.me.
Okay.
So it's me finishing strong. Um,
And
and
how do people connect with you? That's the other thing I wanted to ask.
well, I'm on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
So Scott Couchenour, you'll if you search that, I'm the bald guy in the blue shirt, and you'll see that I help fourth quarter. I'm a fourth quarter coach. You can also email me at coach@servingstrong.com.
Great. And your website?
Servingstrong.com.
Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Scott, thank you so much. I'm relishing what's just happened, and I'm relishing our conversation because I feel like there's so many places of of connection and insight and possible other explorations and
Yes.
crossovers, and um, it's the kind of the most pleasurable kind of conversation.
Well,
Thank you.
I feel the same way. I feel like this has been an honest and delightful exploration of what I think is really going on in people's lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you again.
And
Scott
thank you for the
Couchenour,
opportunity.
good luck to you and good luck with the community. I look forward to hearing about its launch.
Great. Thank you very much.
And thanks to our listeners and our viewers for being with us today at Wisdom Talk Radio. Join us here regularly for more wisdom, discovery, and illumination. And remember, you could find us on your favorite place to listen to podcasts, whether that's iTunes or, gosh, there's a whole list. And if you've enjoyed listening today, please leave us a review, because when you review us, it allows other people to discover what we're doing here. And for me, it's also about, how do we transform the world? Well, we transform the world one person at a time. And then when we get to enough one persons at a time, that takes off. That takes off, and we have exponential growth. And for more about deepening your connection with your own inner guidance, take the Quantum Connection quiz today. You'll be glad you did.
Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio. We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.